This diagram is an illustration of how instructional design can be conducted at an ambulance service. Please keep in mind that there are many ways to conduct an instructional design process. This model, though, is what I believe would work best for the majority of the programs at our ambulance district. The model really starts with a front-end analysis of identifying the learning needs. Since the process of identifying learning needs is complex at an ambulance service, that process has been separated off into the upper portion of this diagram and discussed in a different presentation. But once learning needs have been identified, they can be prioritized. The needs that are determined to be the most pertinent can then be developed into training goals. A training goal or a complete goal statement should identify the learners, state what the learners will be able to do in the learning context, and specify the learning context in which the skills will be applied, as well as the tools and resources that will be available. Once the goals have been written into this format, they can then be analyzed. Goals are really analyzed for two things. First, they should be categorized into their type. Goal types include intellectual skills, psychomotor skills, attitudinal goals, and verbal information goals. Goals are then broken down into steps that the learner must do to perform the goal. The steps are then broken down further into subordinate, entry-level, and prerequisite skills. This analysis is fairly a complex process that involves diagramming the goal, but once that analysis is done, accurate performance objectives can be written based on the diagram. This entire process ensures that the assessments and instructions match the goal that learners need to achieve. Without conducting a detailed analysis, the design runs the risks of addressing learning objectives that are not entirely relevant to the goals. In addition, much of what we do in EMS involves complicated problem-solving processes such as conduct a physical exam. Tasks such as that are deceivingly complex and require analysis for clarification. Once the goal analysis and writing objectives have been completed, the designer can move into formulating an assessment plan. It may seem out of order, but I believe it is best to formalize the assessments for each of the objectives before moving into developing the instructional strategy. The reason for this is that immediately tying the performance goals to their means of being assessed will tighten the instructional strategy so that the entire process stays closely aligned. Also, keep in mind that assessments should not be limited to written tests. Instead, assessments should reflect as closely as possible what it was that the objective specified what the learner should be able to do. They could include simulations, presentations, evaluations of products or procedures, written papers, and even interviews. Once the assessment plan has been formalized, the designer can move into developing the instruction. When developing instruction for performance objectives, the designer needs to decide on a general strategy. The strategy will depend on the prior level of experience and knowledge the learners have related to the objective and to their level of motivation. For more advanced and motivated learners, a more constructivist strategy may be more effective. However, for more entry-level learners or for learning new material, a cognitive approach may be more effective. For more information on the constructivist and cognitive philosophies, you can reference my personal educational philosophy on a different tab of my website. In general, the instruction should follow roughly the same procedure each time. Instruction should start out with some pre-instructional activities that are used to stimulate motivation and focus attention. Next, the instruction should move into presenting the new content with examples and demonstration. Next, there should be some form of active learner participation with practice and feedback. And last, follow-through activities that assess the student's learning and relates the new material to real-world applications. The last piece of the instructional design process in my diagram is forming an evaluation plan. In this instance, I'm referring to the summative evaluation that takes place after the instruction has been implemented. The purpose of the summative evaluation is to determine if the instructional goals have been met. And if a goal was not met, the summative evaluation includes investigation as to why the instruction failed to meet the goal. I have formative evaluation separated off from summative evaluation because I see formative evaluation as a very integral and ongoing process that needs to take place throughout the instructional design process. As the designer progresses through each of the steps, he or she should go back to receive feedback from the participants and the stakeholders. The progress that is made on each of the stages can then be evaluated and adjusted before moving forward into another stage. The diagram also allows for the designer to return to previous stages to make adjustments based on the ongoing formative evaluation process. Because instructional design in an ambulance service is a complex process that involves multiple people, the designer needs to effectively lead the process by having a plan that includes a timeline. They also need to keep meticulous records of progress and remain flexible enough to allow for other people's input. If you have any questions about this presentation, please feel free to contact me. My contact information can be found on the homepage of my website. Thank you.